The Green Bay Packers wrapped up their first two selections of the 2026 NFL Draft, and both moves went straight at the team's most pressing needs. Before we get into the picks themselves, there's also a contract update involving one of the team's most explosive offensive weapons, and I'll walk you through exactly what that means going forward. I'm your host, and this is the draft recap you've been waiting for. Day 2 brought a surprise before the Packers even got on the clock, when wide receiver Jayden Reed put pen to paper on a fresh extension with the franchise. From there, Green Bay turned its attention to defense, landing a cornerback in the second round and a defensive tackle in the third. Before we dive in, stick around until the end, because I've got a fun little challenge for everyone watching, and next week I'll be picking a winner live on the show. With their second round selection, the Packers went and grabbed a corner out of South Carolina. This kid tested off the charts in every athletic drill you can think of: elite vertical leap, blazing straight line speed, and the kind of closing burst that shows up on film every single time he triggers downhill on a screen pass or an outside run. Multiple national outlets had him rated as a first-round caliber talent, so getting him on day 2 feels like an absolute coup for Brian Gutekunst's front office. This is exactly the archetype of player Green Bay has been missing on the back end: a corner with legitimate lockdown upside who can match up with the league's better route runners. When he got the call from the Packers, the emotion on his face said everything. He talked about how surreal the moment felt, how much it meant to join an organization with this kind of history, and how excited he was to get to work. Funny enough, he mentioned his girlfriend's family has deep Wisconsin roots and has been rooting for the Packers for years, so in a strange way this landing spot almost felt destined. The team's area scout, who spent a ton of time around the program, painted the picture of a football obsessive, a kid who's in the film room at all hours, watching everything from Friday night lights to Sunday afternoons, just soaking up the game. Coaches raved about his work ethic, his maturity, and his versatility in coverage, saying he's comfortable playing off, playing press, and transitioning smoothly regardless of the technique called. And the scouts made a point of saying his ceiling isn't close to tapped yet. He's still young, still filling out physically, and the belief internally is that his best football is still ahead of him. His path to this point wasn't a straight line either. He started his career at a different ACC program, never carved out a starting role there, transferred to South Carolina, and finally broke through as a full-time starter last season. In his first year as a starter, he racked up nearly 30 tackles, broke up several passes, picked off a throw, and forced a fumble, a strong debut season that helped shoot his stock up draft boards. He'll now be reuniting with a former college teammate already on Green Bay's roster, which should make the transition that much smoother. He even sat down with a Hall of Fame caliber former cornerback before the draft to break down tape together, and what came through in that conversation was just how much of a football rat this guy is. He talked about going home after practice and immediately pulling up more film, studying opposing coordinators, drawing up coverages just for fun. It's the kind of obsessive love for the details that teams dream about finding in a late second-round pick. But Green Bay wasn't finished there. In round 3, the front office got aggressive, trading up several spots to make sure they landed a defensive tackle out of Missouri. This is a massive human being, pushing 6'4", and well over 300 pounds, with a wingspan that looks like it belongs on a basketball player. Despite the size, he plays with real burst, racking up 6 sacks a season ago, which is no small feat for a player built like an interior road grader. He logged an enormous number of snaps across 2 SEC programs, giving him a level of experience most rookies simply don't have. The front office raved about his positional flexibility, noting he can line up over the nose, kick out to the 3 technique, and hold up in base packages on early downs. One of the team's football operations executives explained that even with all those college snaps under his belt, they still think there's untapped upside, that he's scratching the surface of what he can become at the next level. He also emphasized how important it was to keep adding size and length up front, because injuries happen, and if your depth isn't versatile enough, you end up scrambling by midseason. To move up and get him, Green Bay had to give up more draft capital than just the natural slot swap. They attached a day 3 pick to sweeten the deal and jump several spots. That tells you how much conviction this staff had in the player. When he got the news, he was emotional, thanking the organization for the opportunity and talking about how badly he wants to run out of that tunnel at Lambeau and leap into the stands after his first big play. Now, full transparency, plenty of draft analysts had this pick rated as a bit of a reach, with most projections having him going several rounds later. But after rewatching the tape and looking closer at his measurables, it's easy to see the logic. He fills a glaring need in the middle of the defense and should pair nicely with the athletic, disruptive tackles already on the roster. And that brings us to the news that dropped just before the second round even started. Green Bay locking up their electric slot receiver on a new multi-year deal. The numbers here are significant. A 3-year extension worth right around $50 million total, averaging close to $17 million annually, with a healthy chunk fully guaranteed. This is fantastic business by the front office. Across his first 2 NFL seasons, this receiver set franchise rookie records for production and found the end zone well over a dozen times. Last year was derailed by injuries limiting him to a handful of games, which is exactly why some fans might be sleeping on just how good he really is heading into year 4. Team decision-makers spoke glowingly about him after the deal was announced, calling him a winning football player who tilts the field every time he's healthy and on it. According to advanced tracking metrics, he's been the most efficient receiver in the entire league in terms of quarterback rating when targeted, among players with a meaningful sample size of targets dating back a few seasons. He projects as the team's third option in the passing game behind 2 other talented receivers, but third option undersells how dangerous he can be with the ball in his hands. This move also stabilizes the receiver room for years to come, locking multiple pass catchers into contracts that extend well beyond this upcoming season, with more extensions likely to follow for the team's top outside threat before free agency ever becomes a real conversation. With their 2 biggest defensive needs addressed through the cornerback and the defensive tackle, the rest of this draft becomes about value and depth. Expect the team to look at receiver depth, a developmental quarterback, maybe a change of pace running back, and there's a real case for adding bodies at linebacker and along the offensive line before the weekend wraps up. Now, since you asked for something extra tacked onto the front of all this, let's rewind the clock and revisit an old-school Packers draft moment from years back, the kind of pick that still gets brought up in Green Bay draft rooms today. Back in an earlier draft cycle, Green Bay found itself picking in the back half of the first round after another playoff run, and the front office shocked a lot of people by trading down rather than reaching for a need. They collected an extra day 2 pick in the process and still landed a physical, instinctive linebacker who immediately became a special teams menace as a rookie before working his way into a full-time, starting role by year 2. Scouts at the time loved his tackling radius and his ability to diagnose plays pre-snap, even if his testing numbers weren't eye-popping. The front office talked openly about prioritizing football character over pure measurables with that pick, and it ended up paying off with several years of quietly excellent play in the middle of the defense. That same draft class also delivered a developmental offensive tackle who barely saw the field his rookie year, spent a full offseason working with the strength staff to completely remake his body, and then emerged 2 years later as a full-time starter protecting the blind side. It's a reminder that not every hit shows up in year 1, and that patient roster building has always been part of how this organization operates, long before the current front office regime took over. Bringing it back to the present, this has been a genuinely productive stretch for Green Bay. 2 clear starters on defense added through the draft, and a core offensive piece locked up long-term, all within the same 24-hour window. That's about as good a start to a draft weekend as any fan base could ask for. That's going to do it for this recap. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next update. Drop your thoughts down in the comments for a chance to win some gear next week. And I'll be back soon with a full breakdown of the remaining rounds and the newest additions to the roster. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.